What a what an important time of year to be on calls like this so that we can really stay laser focused. This is the time of year. What are we? December 12th. Agents have already gone on vacation since Halloween, and then Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, and a week or two after, New Year's Day is when they finally start to maybe get their head out of the clouds. It's really a shame. And it happens every single year to so many agents. There's like a solid 3 months that is just gone. It's lost 90 days. That's 25% of the entire year. And it's dangerous. I don't think I like taking time off, but do it because you choose to do it, not because you just get caught up in this mentality of there's no business out there. And, because truthfully, there is business out there. There are people that are going to list their house today and this week, and they're within like a mile of where we're all sitting right now, each one of us. There's a lot of people that are getting ready to list their homes or that want to buy a home. So just have an awareness that there's business all the time, and don't let the holidays, take time off for the holidays. Just don't let it just overly consume your whole being for a 3-month period of time. We actually shut down the office between Christmas and New Year's. So, there's not a lot going on. I'm available via phone, but it's okay. Take that time, but there's a start and an end to that time off. So we're going to talk about handling objections today. And I realized one of the biggest objections we have sometimes is an internal objection. It's in our own head. We're an objection that we're putting up for ourselves, a stumbling block that we keep hitting, or a hurdle that we have to, overcome. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that sometimes the first objection we have to handle is with ourselves, where we believe something is not possible, or we believe that we don't have the skills to reach a certain level. So just have an awareness of that as well. So let's start with point number one with handling objections. And that is, an objection is simply a question in the mind of the customer that remains unanswered. That's all an objection really is. It's a question that remains unanswered. So just answer people's questions. That's the simplicity of it. Now, an objection, that presupposes that you're talking to someone that has some level of motivation. They have to be motivated to give you an objection, right? Mark, you and I were talking yesterday about we'll call it a lead in quotes, because it really wasn't a lead. It was a guy that said, you're trying to draw out of him, would you sell your property and under what circumstances and how much? The guy was just not motivated. He just wasn't motivated. So you're asking him, hey, if you were to sell, how much would you sell it for? And he really didn't have an answer for you because there was no motivation there. You can't get an objection from someone that's not motivated. So it's presupposing that you have to understand that you're talking to someone that has a level of motivation to buy or sell real estate, and then they're going to give you an objection. Oh, gosh, I really appreciate you calling, but I have a friend in the business, and we always, we plan on working with that friend, or we're really looking to work with a neighborhood specialist, or what's your commission? We don't want to pay a full commission, or we potentially would work with you, but we only want to sign a 30-day contract. Like, these are all objections that you can handle because you've got motivated people that you're working with. So it requires a skill set to be able to handle those objections. But remember, an objection is simply a question in the mind of the customer that remains unanswered. That's all an objection is. So by learning the answers to the most common questions, there's really only 6 or 7 or 8 objections that have been around since the dawn of real estate, such as, I have a friend in the business, or we're looking for a neighborhood specialist, or will you cut your commission, right? These like simple things. Number 2, a condition, however, is a statement of fact that you can do nothing about. So that's what you got to understand. There's objections and there's conditions. Two separate things. An objection, you can handle the objection. You've got a motivated, qualified person, and they give you an objection, and you handle that objection, allows you to move on and set that appointment or take that listing. A condition is something that you can do nothing about. It's simply a statement of fact. So an example, what's an example of a condition? Like back to Mark's example yesterday, he was talking with a guy who pretty much had a condition. He didn't want to sell his property. It was a tenant occupied property. It's making him money. It was easy to own. There was no motivation to do something. Another example of a condition is, you call up somebody and let's say somebody walks into your open house. Yeah, we'll be looking to buy. Great. Why don't we set an appointment? Let me hook you over with my lender and we'll show you some properties. Yeah, but we can't do that until my husband retires. Okay, ma'am, tell me more about that. When is that supposed to happen? In 2 years. Oh, so let me be clear. So after he retires, that's when you're looking to sell your property and get something a little less expensive and do the downsize. Oh, yeah, exactly. We're not going to do that for another 2 years. That's not an objection. You can't handle that objection. That is a condition. It is a statement of fact that you can do nothing about. An objection would be somebody walking into your house and saying, hey, listen, we would love to buy a property. We just don't think we can afford it. Interest rates have gone up and God, we'd love to do this, but we don't see how that's feasible. I can handle that objection. Let me have you speak with my lender. Have you heard of a 2-1 buy down? What if we can get you, rates closer to 5% rather than 7%? So these are all objections, but a condition, remember, by asking questions, you're determining, is this an objection? Is it something I can handle? Is it something I can guide them through? Or is it simply a condition? Statement of fact, I can do nothing about. You're calling an expired listing. And they say, no, we decided not to sell our property. And you ask more questions. Why is that? And they say, well, we were going to move to Austin, Texas, but my job transfer fell through. So I have no need to sell anymore, and I'm not looking to move. That's a condition. It's a statement of fact. Before you were going to transfer jobs, now you're not going to transfer jobs. It's not like there's anything to handle. So even if you said to that prospect, well, if somebody wrote you an offer, would you still accept it? If somebody paid you full price, would you still consider that? It's like, are you not listening to me? I don't need to sell my house anymore. It's a condition, right? That's the difference between the objection and condition. So how do you ultimately determine whether there's objections that are getting in the way that you can handle or there's conditions? You ask questions, right? You ask questions, lots and lots of questions, digging deeper questions. Next point on handling objections. Remember, there's a direct correlation between the amount of objections that you receive and the strength and quality of your presentation. That's kind of interesting. Meaning, when you give a really strong presentation, many times you don't get any objections. If you are on a listing appointment and you give a really strong presentation, you've studied the comps before walking in there. You know every single one of them. So you really understand pricing and you're able to share that with them. And by the way you are composed and the way you present your presentation, they understand that you are a pro. You have confidence and conviction, and they're like, we're following this guy. We totally trust him. Believe me, by the end of that presentation, there aren't a lot of objections, if any, that they're going to throw at you. Oh, well, we wanted to talk to 2 more agents and talk to 3 in total before we actually made a decision. Oh, well, we actually, what's your commission? Or, we want to interview this other agent we gave a commitment to. That doesn't come up. When you give a really strong presentation, people say things like, you know what, I thought I wanted to interview another agent, but we're comfortable Honey, are you comfortable? Yeah, I am too. We're comfortable with you. We'd like to get started today. So it's a great point and it's a valuable point, and it really speaks to being a fantastic, strong presenter. This is not just presenting on a listing appointment. It's presenting during your prospecting, during your lead follow-up. If you're a really strong, if you're a really strong prospector, there generally are not many objections to you setting an appointment when you find a motivated lead. When you're doing lead follow-up and you're doing it effectively and efficiently and professionally, there's not a lot of objections. You call them up, you determine how you can assist them, you set the appointment. When you go on an appointment, a listing appointment, and you make a really strong presentation, and people see that you have the confidence and the knowledge and the know-how, you know what you're doing, and they feel comfortable following you, not a lot of objections. When you meet a buyer at an open house, and they see that, my goodness, this guy or this gal, they just know all the inventory. They know everything about every home that's sold. They know the neighborhood. They know the schools. They know, like, they know it all. Like, there's not a lot of objection to them working with you. So again, there is a direct correlation between the amount of objections you receive and the strength and quality of your presentation. Everything we're doing all the time is a presentation. Whether we're prospecting for new business, whether we're doing lead follow-up, whether we're on an appointment, whether we're talking to past clients or center of influence, we're presenting. We're constantly presenting in some capacity. And they really understand when there's professionalism behind that. And it makes the whole goal of that presentation much more attainable for everyone involved. The goal of a prospecting or lead follow-up call is to set an appointment. It makes that goal much more attainable when you're presenting professionally. The whole goal of a listing appointment is to take the listing. It makes the whole goal of taking that listing like so much easier when you present professionally. So that's why it's recommended to always work on your presentation. Always practice, always rehearse, always role play. Next point. Since the objections never change, don't be afraid of them, just learn the answers. Some agents are really concerned about getting objections. They don't want to get objections. It's almost like, again, Mark and I talk a lot because he's constantly on the phones, 20 feet from me. A lot, he's on the phones. So he's always coming up and we always talk about it. So a lot of the examples I use are just through our conversations. So since the objections never change, don't be afraid of them, learn the answers. Some agents are afraid of getting an objection. You're prospecting, you find a hot lead, it's like, oh, I got one. Okay, great. Oh, thanks for your time on the phone. I'll call you in a few months. Have a great day. Bye. Got one. All right, that's cool. You guys hear that? Everyone hear that? Rather than you get a great lead and you say, let me take this opportunity to really ask more questions and deeper questions and really delve into what is their motivation, where do they want to go, and how soon do they want to be there, and what's important to them, and what happens if they don't move. And tell me more about that, and digging deeper and deeper and deeper, so that by the end of that call, you understand everything there is to know. Some agents don't want to do that because they don't want to get to the end too quickly because they might not have a really hot lead. So when you have somebody on the phone or in person, don't put off the follow-up, for next week or next month when you can do it right there. When you can ask more questions right there. I can understand if somebody walks into an open house and three other couples walk in, you can't really have a really deep conversation. But if you're the only ones there, take the time to really, that's a presentation. That's kind of an appointment. It's like a pre-appointment. So really don't put for tomorrow. Don't kick the can down the road unless it's absolutely necessary. Have those conversations and have them now, today, in a timely manner. Next point. Handling objections is primarily mind over matter. We can remove the fears we have about them by learning the answers and practicing them daily. So handling objections is mind over matter, meaning when people are objecting to something, in many cases, it's just trying to slow down the process. I'm not ready to do this. I need a moment to think about it, is what they're really saying. When they're saying, how much commission do you charge? Or, how many homes have you sold in the neighborhood? Or what's your marketing plan? Just put the brakes on for a second. Let me pump the brakes. That's all they're really saying. But handling objections is primarily mind over matter, which means when you show up in a very calm way with a level of certainty and professionalism and conviction and strength, it puts them at ease and really makes a lot of their objections dissipate. There's a guy that I know that sells insurance. I don't like seeing him. I don't like talking to him because it's like he has commission breath, right? I can see it coming out of his pores from a mile away. And it's like, I don't want to talk to this guy. It may or may not be true, but when I see him coming, all I'm thinking is, I can see in his mind, what can I get from him? What can I get? How can I benefit from? We don't want clients to think that way. If a client felt your confidence and conviction and professionalism, where they felt, my goodness, by dealing with this person, they're going to help me achieve my goal. They're going to put my interest and my needs first. They're going to treat that fiduciary relationship with a high level of integrity. Like, I trust this person. Not a whole lot of objections that come up. So when I say objection handling is mind over matter, it means showing up in such a way that you really put people at ease. Next point, don't try and handle objections during your prospecting. Don't try and handle all the objections during prospecting. Remember, what's the point of prospecting? To make it a perfect prospecting call, what has to happen?
It's prospecting is lead generation.
Right? But to make it a perfect call, the end result of a prospecting call is an appointment. That's the sign of a perfect prospecting call. I call someone, I meet them, and I'm prospecting them, and we end with an appointment. If you can't get that appointment, lead follow-up is the next best thing. But ultimately, the goal of prospecting is to set an appointment. So when I'm calling, I'm trying to set an appointment. So in handling objections, let's say you're calling an expired listing or for sale by owner or cold call or a referral from a past client or whatever, and they say, what's your commission? What I would say is, you know what? Commission it's variable, it's negotiable. In fact, let me make a note. It'll be one of the first things that we discuss when I come over. So I can really go through it and explain it. Is that fair enough? And they'll say, yeah, no problem. Totally fine. We're not trying to handle all the objections on the call. We're trying to set an appointment. Great. That'll be one of the first things we discuss when we meet. You want to do that on Tuesday at 2:00, or is 4:00 better for you? Now, when I go to meet with them, they may or may not bring up commissions. I'm still going to go through my presentation. And if they bring up commissions, if they don't bring it up, I'm going to bring it up because we have to sign a listing agreement. But that's an appropriate time. When we're signing a listing agreement, we'll talk about commissions. They'll say, whoa, hold on, 6%. Are you kidding? I said, yeah, let's talk about it. What were you expecting? Well, I was going to pay 4%. Well, let me explain why I won't do 4%, and let's see if we can arrange something that works mutually beneficially for you and for me. And we have a conversation when we're there in person, right? So don't try and handle objections too early in the process. You're not trying to disqualify a prospect or disqualify an appointment prematurely. Right? That's like Sean. We were talking this morning about this woman who I already knew she wanted $1.6 million for her property. It's probably worth $1.2 million at best. I wasn't going to handle that objection over the phone. Everybody wants more for their property. I don't blame her for that. Nothing wrong with that. If I was to sell my house, I would want more than it's worth. Who doesn't? But I'm not going to handle that objection over the phone for her to say, "Oh, hold on, I don't want to list with you." So really don't try and handle them prematurely. Handle them in person on an appointment. That's the best time. Next point. To learn the answers of objections, take one objection per week and write out 2 or 3 ways of handling it. And then you practice and role play until it's just committed to your memory. Again, so you can go to MikeFerry.com and look at Mike. He has a whole list of objection handlers. Like the one that's the easiest to remember, excuse me, is Mike Ferry's objection to, we want you to cut your commission, right? Anybody know what Mike Ferry's answer is when somebody says, we want you to cut your commission? His answer is
No. Any other
no. Any
questions?
other questions? Right. No. Any other questions? That's how Mike Ferry teaches us to answer that. Now they might push and say, we want you to cut commissions. I'm sorry, I don't do that. Any other questions? Well, the other agent said they would. And there's another way to handle that. Well, if the other agent doesn't have the strength to stand up to you regarding their own worth, how strong are they going to be defending you and the price we set on your home? Sean, I have that courage, right? So that's a script, right? So handling objections is just identifying what they are, learning 1 or 2 or 3 ways to handle that objection, writing it down or getting it. Mike Ferry, Tom Ferry, there's 100 real estate coaches. I happen to follow Mike Ferry's coaching. It's very direct. And all you do is go to MikeFerry.com. You have all of his scripts, all of his objection handlers, questions and answers, and you just identify them and learn the answers. To a point that there are some agents that literally will get to a presentation and they're ready for the objections, but they give such a strong presentation, they don't get any objections. It's almost like, oh man, I wanted to flex that muscle a little bit. I've been working so hard on handling the commission objection, right? On handling the price objection, right? Oh, you wanted to list it at $1 million. We want $1 million too. Like you want to exercise that a little bit. But as you get better and better and better with your practice, with your rehearsal, with your role play, you actually get less and less and less objections. And I think the reason why that is, I don't know, but what I have surmised over the years, because I've seen this happen, the more prepared I am, the less objections I get. I think what it is that people just, when you show up with that level of confidence and conviction, Matthew Ferry, Mike's son, I don't know if he's the one that coined this phrase, but I first heard it from him where he said, everyone secretly wants to be led. I've had clients, and we've all had clients that were very powerful people, very intelligent people, way smarter than me, way wealthier than me, brain surgeons and astrophysicists and heads of corporations, you know. But when it comes to real estate, I walk in there really knowing that there's nobody that knows more about real estate than I do, that they can just follow my lead. They might be a brain surgeon and be brilliant in what they do. But when it comes to real estate, you can follow me. I won't misguide you. So I think when you become really, really astute and good with handling objections and making a really powerful presentation, people just get in line and they follow. Next point on handling objections. Although you will use emotion during your presentation, use logic when handling objections, as it makes it easier for the prospect to understand. Sales, I think you guys can agree, can be very emotional for people. When you're talking to someone and there's a prospect and you're looking to set that appointment, or again, open house is such an easy one because everyone can visualize that. Not everybody's on the phones prospecting all the time, but everyone's been in an open house and we see somebody come in. And you might use emotion in that sales process. You might tell a story about something that happened with another buyer in another scenario. Whatever it is, whatever your technique is, sales in many cases is an emotional experience, an emotional level of communication between agent and prospect. But when handling objections, you want to bring logic into the situation, right? So somebody says, we want you to cut your commission. And you say, no. Any other questions? They say, well, the other agent will do it for less. And then you go through handler number two. Well, can I tell you why that makes me nervous? If an agent is willing to cut their commission just like that, how strong are they going to be defending you in the price you set in your home? I have that courage. Let's go ahead and sign the contract, please. Yeah, but that's still not good enough for them. Then we're going to start to really bring in some logic. So that second objection handler was logical. If they're so willing to cut their own commission, how fast are they really going to defend you? You want more logic? No. I still need more logic, they're telling you. No, I'm still not ready to list at 6%. So maybe they need some more logic. Good. Can I explain to you why 6%, why you choose to list it at 6%? They say, sure, like, please do. Okay, we need more logic. We need more logic. Do you know how many homes per year the average agent sells? No, I don't know, 10, 15, 20. It's actually between 2 and 3 homes per year. Did you know that, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, seller? No, I didn't know that. So really what that means is that when they're working with a buyer and bringing them to our listing, to your listing, that buyer might represent 30 or 40 or 50% of their annual income. Now, by signing a listing agreement at 6%, it allows us to offer 3% to the buyer's agents. Now, if everybody else on the multiple listing service is offering 2.5%, and you're offering 3%, and this buyer we already know represents 20, 30, 40, 50% of this agent's annual income, how motivated do you think they're going to be to sell your home? There's a reason why all of our listings have multiple offers. Agents love getting paid more. So literally the difference between 5 and 6% is 1% difference. So on your $1.2 million property, it's $12,000. It's not an insignificant amount of money. But to a buyer, that $12,000, it's a drop in the bucket. It's nothing. And we're going to see them push above and beyond what any other house could get just because their agents are making more money. Does that make sense? Great. Let's go ahead and sign it at 6%. Logic. So just be prepared with logic. Next point when it comes to handling objections. Does anybody have anything they want to add while we'll take a little moment? Anybody want to unmute or add anything before we move on to the next point? Questions, comments, concerns? All right, cool. Next point. Remember not to argue because it puts the prospect on the defense and it makes it more difficult to get a contract signed. We're not trying to be argumentative. Somebody says, I don't want to pay you 6%. So can I share why that makes me nervous? Is that okay? I'm not arguing. Or you can even say, I can totally understand that. I would feel exactly the way you do. Can I tell you why that makes me nervous, though? Can I share with you another perspective? I'm not arguing. You're an idiot. You're not saying that. So remember not to argue because it puts the prospect on a defense. Always. Who was it? It was Tony Robbins. We went to see Tony Robbins once, and he did a really fun exercise. He brought a guy up to the stage, just someone out of the audience, and he says, put your hand up like this, right out in front of you, put your fist up. And Tony walks up and goes like this and starts pushing the person, and the person starts going backwards. And like the end of the stage is like not that far. They start pushing forwards. So now, Tony starts pushing, and then boom, they start pushing back. And Tony says, why are you pushing? And they said, because you're pushing me. That's what arguing is. If you push someone, they naturally, instinctively will want to push back. If you're not pushing, they don't need to push back. In fact, when you're on, so for those of you that do a lot of telephone prospecting, if you're talking loudly and quickly and you're talking over people, they're just like, God, I don't have time. Bye. Don't call me again. If you actually talk more slowly and a little more quietly, it actually makes people like lean in. Like, huh? What was it? Really? So by not pushing, or by pushing, you're really forcing people to push back. And that really, really comes into play with objection handling, not making them wrong. There's a time and a place to really bring logic into a situation, but it has to be done with a level of precision, right? So don't argue, don't make them wrong, agree, and move things forward. And agree doesn't mean if somebody says, I think my property, if you think a property is worth $1.2 million and they want to list it at 2 million, you're not just saying, yeah, okay, I guess we'll list it at $2 million. But you can say, I can totally understand why you'd feel that way. Can I share with you another perspective? Is it okay to share with you the research I've done to show you the way the market might view your property? So not really just combating people. We're not trying to cut them down emotionally like that. Next point, and maybe we'll make this the last point of the day. Learn to recognize that at times, the prospect is simply bringing up an objection to create conversation. Understand that you can smile and continue without actually answering that. It's kind of crazy if you've never had this experience, if somebody brings up an objection to just, I don't want to say ignore it, but just kind of push it to the side for a moment, and then it never comes up again. To use my example from before, when you're talking to someone and say, listen, I don't want to, let's say I call an expired listing. Listen, I don't want to list it full commission. My last agent did it at 3%. Will you do it at 3%? I can totally appreciate that. Tell me though, if you had sold the house, where were you going to go next? And so how soon did you have to be there? And is it still something you would like to do? And if somebody still wrote you an offer, would you still accept it? Great. That's exactly why we need to get together. Why don't we go ahead and meet? You want to do today or tomorrow at 4 p.m.? What's better for you? And you go on the appointment and you give your presentation and you list it at 5% or 6%, where they've told you their last agent listed at 3%, because you've made a solid presentation. So keep in mind, not every single objection needs to be answered. Sometimes the prospect is just saying, I want to slow things down a little bit. I'm not quite ready to make this decision. So they throw some objections up. Or sometimes they don't know what to say. They're just bringing up conversation. It's happened more times than I can count where somebody says, what's your commission? And I say 6%. And they say, okay. It's almost like, okay, check that box. So not every, it's not always kind of linear. They say this, I must answer it. A conversation is a living, breathing thing. And sometimes you can just put them aside. Let me just brush over that for now. We'll come back to that. Or that'll be one of the first things we discuss. Or let's just discuss this first. I'm curious, or I can see why you bring that up. But before getting into that, I wanted to ask you, you can push things aside. And many times they're just because the prospect just wants to have more conversation or pump the brakes. You don't have to answer an objection, every single objection that comes up. You start to get a little feel for it the more you're talking to people. So it all happens very, very organically. All right, let's open the mics up. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, not just about objection handling or handling objections or scripting, but anything? Working with buyers or working with sellers or mindset or schedule. Phil, what's going on?
Hi, Aaron. So I have about, I want to say, and then 3 buyers or so who are reluctant to buy, even though all the data points that we're likely to have rates decreases, and we're likely to have more inventory, and likely we're going to see more competitive market. At least that's what I see. And which I'm trying to urge the buyers to buy now and refinance later, right? But they're just reluctant and they just feel they should wait. So I'm having problems getting them to, take that next step to commit and buy.
I have 2 things for you. Jackie, would you mind putting Brent Leitner's information into the thread? So this is a good friend of mine, Phil, and he is also a lender that I use personally for my clients and for myself when I have to buy something or refi. I use Brent. I want to give you his number because even if you never do a loan with him, he'll give you. He has a whole presentation on this, and he'll share with you some stuff. And he's happy to he's very kind of relationship driven. So even if you're like, Brett, Aaron asked me to give you a call because he said you have some points on this. And I just want you to know, I've got a lender that I'm very happy with. We've worked together for 20 years. Like, Brett doesn't care. He really is there to serve. The agent community does great, but he will give you 4 or 5 points. And I would say you only need to really understand maybe 1 or 2 of those. Depending on who the buyer is, I would share something in a very simplistic, very easy to understand way to see if that helps them to see what you see. And you know what? They still might not see it. I was recently working with friends of mine, and they were keeping their current house, which was a very expensive house, and they were buying another house, which was a more expensive house. And their payment was going to be over $20,000 a month for the new house. It's a big payment, right? And they both work, they're both doctors, and they can make the payments, but it would be a massive, massive struggle. So they're thinking, do we like, and they're doctors, they're conservative people. They're thinking this is going to change our lives in a very uncomfortable way if we buy this other home. We'll turn our old one into a rental. And I just explained to them, I said, listen, I wasn't trying to like move mountains here. I was trying to explain in a very simple way what I truly believe to be the case. These are friends of mine. And I said, listen, guys, right now, it's a very tough time to buy. Prices are high, rates are high, your payment is going to be high. Like, who wants to do that? But I said, for those few people that are brave enough to buy a property now, we already know rates are coming down the next 12 months or so, 12, 18 months, whatever they are. What do you think is going to happen when rates come down, when they drop 1% or 2%? The market is going to be flooded by buyers. Imagine all the people on the sidelines. So if you can kind of pierce through that wall of doubt and fear and the payment, what's going to happen when rates come down is you're going to refi out of it. So your payment's going to go down and your equity is going to shoot up because values are going to go up. This could be the defining moment financially as far as your net worth building over your lifetime. Seriously. Like you have one house in Manhattan Beach and now you'll have two. And over the next 10 or 20 years, now each of those is going to go up by $1 million or more. I mean, this truly is a shift in your trajectory in wealth building. And they understood it. And then after they bought their house, she said to me, Aaron, you pushed us in a way that we have never pushed ourselves. And I have to thank you for it because we're so conservative. You didn't force us. You didn't make us feel like stressed about it, but you just honestly shared with us your beliefs. And it made us like, it made us feel comfortable. Like we can do this. Not everybody is going to take that coaching and do something with it, but they were ready. So not everyone feels and be like, oh my God, Phil, you just like showed us something that we didn't see before. But at least you can be prepared in a very simplistic manner. And Brett will share with you 3 or 4 or 5 different graphs and points and like very like blatantly obvious things that you will have at your disposal that you can share with people, because it really is, I believe this, it really is the best time to buy, you know? And so I think just having that available ammunition, I guess, or something you can call upon to utilize that knowledge, but not just having it, because you can't then just make them wrong and just like vomit information all over them. It's having the knowledge, but being able to explain it in such a simplistic way. A lot of times it's speaking with less words. You can see like I'm talking slowly and deliberately, and every single word is there for a reason. It's being placed for a very specific reason. You've got to almost be able to explain it to a 5th grader, to an elementary school student. If their son or daughter can understand why it's a valuable thing for them to buy a property, then they'll get it. So I would probably kind of answer it in that way, Phil. Having the knowledge, but as importantly, being able to deliver it very simply, very concisely, very powerfully. What else, guys? Anything else you're dealing with before we end today's call? All right, perfect. Well, I'm really, I really, I love these calls. I get so much value out of them, and especially this time of year. What a valuable time of year to get focused and zoned in on doing our job at the highest level. You guys are amazing. Keep up the wonderful work. Get out there and do great work. And we'll talk next week. Take good care, guys. Be well.